Hey everybody, Keith Dotson here in Demopolis, Alabama, and we're looking at the Coca-Cola wall ad made famous by a series of photographs by the late artist and photographer William Christenberry. I'll put links in the description where you can see the photos referenced in this video. Christenberry worked in several media, including painting and sculpture, but he's probably best known for his photographs of vernacular architecture in Alabama. By the way, this is the third in my series visiting Christenberry locations. In previous videos, we went to Newbern and Greensboro, Alabama. As an adult, Christenberry lived in Washington, D.C., but he was born in Hale County, Alabama, and he came back to his subjects many times year after year. By repeatedly photographing his locations, he could see them change over time, following many of them through stages of decay and eventual collapse. This Coca-Cola wall ad was no exception. He made a number of images of it over time. There are a number of iterations dated to the years of 1976, 1978, 1980, and 1981, and there may be others that I didn't see. Once he shot the entire wall ad, including the full Coca-Cola logo. On other visits, he concentrated on the 5-cent portion of the wall. Sometimes the painted 5 of the 5 cents part was partially obscured by plants growing along the foundation of the wall. Other times it was fully visible. Christenberry was heavily influenced by his friendship with legendary Works Progress Administration photographer Walker Evans. It was Evans who encouraged Christenberry to take his photography seriously. Since I thought I might never be there again, I decided to shoot this in a variety of formats, including digital medium format and 35mm Tri-X. The Tri-X was expired, so I saw this as a chance to use it up. Let's take a complete scan of the wall. These Coke wall ads were ubiquitous across the South. I photographed them in many locations, and in a previous video I told the story of how I thought if I could research the dates when the price of Coca-Cola was 5 cents, I could get an estimation of how old that particular wall ad might be. But to my surprise, I learned that the Coca-Cola company kept the price at 5 cents for 73 years. You heard that right. The price of a bottle of Coke was 5 cents from 1886 until 1959. Coke had advertised itself at 5 cents so pervasively, even on the packaging, that to change the price would have been very expensive. Imagine repainting all these wall ads all over the country. Plus, they had a lot of vending machines that accepted nickels, raising the price to a dime, and for those watching outside the United States, a dime is the denomination of coin after nickel, and it's worth 10 cents. So, raising the price to a dime would have meant doubling the price of a bottle of Coke, certainly enough of a price jump to ensure unhappy customers. Believe it or not, the Coca-Cola company tried to get the U.S. Treasury Department to make a 7.5-cent coin in 1953, just so they could raise the price on vending machines to 7.5 cents. But the government declined to do that, and so the Coca-Cola company was stuck with 5 cents for a few more years. Much of the paint is faded, but the Coca-Cola logo has been retouched since Christenberry was here. The Coca-Cola wall ad is part of the old Merchant's Grocery Company, which as you can see is now in ruins, which makes me wonder about the future of the wall itself. I think this art landmark may be endangered. The Merchant Grocery Company building was constructed in 1896 and was a grocery wholesaler. This is actually the back side of the warehouse, and the storefront of the business was on the opposite side on Walnut Street. You can see it on the left on the screen. That's also where the Rosenbusch Furniture Company was housed from 1978 until closing in 2003. That year, the Rosenbusch family donated the building to the city of Demopolis. This is a really poor quality scan attached to the National Register of Historic Places that shows the Rosenbusch Furniture Company storefront, which of course was the Merchant Grocery Company before that. The photo would have been circa 1979, not too many years after Christenberry had visited Demopolis. And this is the warehouse around back. I think this look at the building helps illustrate the precarious future of the Christenberry Wall. It appears that the city understands the importance of the wall and are attempting to preserve it, though. This is the alley with the Merchant's Grocery Company warehouse on the left and the back of the Rosenbusch Furniture Company on the right. Of course, my goal in photographing this wall was not to copy or recreate one of Christenberry's iconic shots, so what was the point of me coming? I guess my goal was to present the wall as it looks today, in the context of the location. Like this example, it shows the wall and the front of the old Merchant's Grocery Company. And in the interest of transparency, you may have noticed that I did paste some clouds from an old photo in my archive to activate that large area of empty sky on the right. It's very difficult to make a unique image of an iconic location that has undoubtedly been shot by many subsequent photographers as well. And if I managed to do anything new here, it was probably with this pano that shows the entire wall at nearly 105 inches wide, stitched together from 4 individual medium format frames. The Coca-Cola wall ad wasn't one of them, but Walker Evans photographed some of the same locations as Christenberry around here, only many years earlier. You'll see 2 of those next. We're off to Sprott, Alabama, after we cruise around Demopolis for a few more minutes. Hey y'all, so here we are in Sprott, Alabama, actually about 3 miles south at a junction between Alabama State Route 14 and Highway 175. This is the little church in Sprott made iconic by Christenberry in the 1970s and before him in the 1930s by Walker Evans. It's called the St. James Church. Now, if you're familiar with the Christenberry image of this church, you may be thinking it's not the same church, and you're right and you're wrong. Apparently the church had a makeover in the 1980s or later and took on a drastically different appearance. To me, it looks like a face with its mouth gaping wide open. In an interview on NPR, Christenberry described the experience of first seeing the church while on a visit back in Alabama for Christmas in 1971. He said he and his family rode past the church on their way to the home of a relative, and when he saw it, he told his wife he wanted to stop and make a picture of it. He said the photo haunted him in a good way after he got the print back from the drugstore. In 1981, Christenberry returned to the church, as was his method, to photograph it again, but the original look with the two towers was still intact. Next, Christenberry described the new look of the church, which he declined to call ugly, but said it's not as beautiful as it was with the two towers. He took a guess that maybe the church was renovated to make more room. I'll put a link to that audio in the show notes, along with links to all the sources. I decided to shoot it in digital X-Pan mode on my Hasselblad X1D. And here it is on 35mm black and white. Not too crazy about this either. These lighting conditions are just really hard to deal with. Of course, the church is not the only location Christenberry photographed in Sprott. He also went down to the Crossroads to photograph the little store that also once served as a post office. So then, of course, next I took the short drive up the road to that isolated crossroad where Walker Evans and William Christenberry and possibly countless other photographers have stood since then. This building was a country general store and a post office, a pretty common arrangement in those days when people could pick up their mail at the store. Here's a look at the Walker Evans image from 1936. Like the church, this building has also changed since then. The front part was removed somewhere over time, but the bulk of the building appears to be roughly the same. Here we can see signage that indicates that it was a Greyhound bus station. The angular slats on the shutters are still the same, and look at that old horseshoe. Incredibly, it's also still there, albeit under many coats of paint. We will look more closely at that in a moment. Look at the size of that padlock. And there it is, the very same lucky horseshoe that was here in 1936 when Walker Evans photographed this building originally. I'm kind of mind-boggled that it's still here. I also made some ultra-wide format photos of this building, and I like the fact that it brought in the bend of the road on the left. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing these two significant locations in the history of photography. Thanks for watching. Be sure to visit my website at keithdotson.com.